topic for today is fundamental concept of cost. In this video, we would be covering the concept of cost. We would also be covering the elements of cost. Now, coming to the first topic for today, that is the concept of cost. The term cost refers to the amount of expenditure, actual or notional, incurred on or attributable to a given thing. That is, cost refers to any kind of expense which is made, either which is related directly or indirectly to a particular product or service. A business expresses cost as the amount of money that is spent on the production or creation of a good or service. When we talk about the word cost from seller's point of view, cost is the amount of money spent to produce a good, whereas cost of a product from the buyer's point of view refers to as price. That is, it is the amount charged for a product by the seller. This also includes both the cost of making the product and the profit added to the seller's cost. Now, let us see on what basis cost depends in a business. The number one is the nature of business or industry. That is, what kind of business the company is involved, what kind of business the person is doing. Say, one is involved in a factory. That is, one is having a business of a factory. So, the cost over there refers to the cost of raw material. It also refers to the cost of labor, cost of finished goods, etc. When we talk about a person who is having or who is maintaining his own office, say of sale purchase, for him the cost may refer to as the cost of wages, cost of salaries, office expenses, etc., such as lighting, cost of operating any kind of machinery, etc. The next point says the context in which it is used. Cost also refers to as in what terms it is used in business. Say it is a fixed cost, it is variable cost or semi-variable cost. We would be talking about all this in detail during this chapter. Now, let us discuss what are the elements of cost. Elements. Elements means basically what all does cost involve. What all is termed as cost in a business. There are direct material, direct labor, direct expenses and overheads. Overheads are further of three types, that is factory overheads, office and administrative overheads, selling and distribution overheads. Before we talk about direct and indirect, let us know the different terminologies such as material, labor, expense and overhead. Material, the substances from which a product is made is known as material. Say, cotton is used to make cotton cloth. So, the material over there refers to as cotton. Material can either be direct or indirect. The direct materials are all those material which are directly involved in the production. Say, in this case, cotton was a direct material because without cotton, cotton clothes cannot be made. Now, let us discuss labor. What do we mean by the word labor? Labor means the human efforts required for converting the raw material into finished goods. such as the labor which are involved in the production processes in the factory. That is the workers who are involved day in day out in the production in the factory. Labor can also be direct as well as indirect. We would be talking about it at length later. Expenses. Expenses is the amount of money which is spent either directly or indirectly, which are also involved and which are also part of the cost of the company. Next is overheads. Overheads refers to the amount which is spent over and above the normal routine expenses. They are of three types, that is indirect material, indirect labor and indirect overheads. Now, overheads are further divided into three types: factory overheads, office and administration overheads, and selling and distribution overheads. When we talk about factory overheads, indirect material over here refers to in the factory such as lubricants, oil, consumable stores, etc. All those materials which are not directly involved in the production, but they are involved and they play a key role. For example, without proper lubrication of the machinery will run off, they would not work properly. So it is very much important to lubricate the machines. So this cost is part of indirect material cost. Now let us talk about indirect labor. In case of factory overheads, the labor which is not directly involved in the production process, such as the gatekeeper salary, the timekeeper salary, these are the people who are not directly involved, they are not working with the machines, but without them the business is not going to run properly. They also play a key role in the factory, so they are part of the indirect labor. Indirect expenses. All those expenses in the factory such as rent, factory insurance, factory lighting, which are not directly involved with the production, but without there being a building which is on rent, a factory cannot run. Without there being proper lighting, fans, etc., the factory cannot run. So these are the costs which are not directly involved with the production, but they indirectly play a major role. These costs become in the factory as indirect expenses. Now, let us discuss office and administration overheads. Number one is indirect material. In case of office and administration overheads, the indirect material used are such as printing and stationery material, brooms and dusters, etc., which are not directly involved, but without there being proper stationery and printing material, the office cannot run the show properly. Indirect labor. In case of office, the indirect labor refers to as the salaries payable to the office manager, office accountant and clerks. For example, without the accountant in the office, the profit and loss of the business cannot be calculated. So, he also plays a key role, but his cost cannot be termed as direct cost because he is not directly involved with the production in the office. That is why it comes under the head of indirect labor. Now, let us discuss the indirect expenses in the office and administration overhead. The indirect expenses such as rent, insurance, office lighting, as we discussed earlier also, is part of the indirect expenses in case of office as well. Coming to the sales and distribution overheads. These include indirect materials such as packing material, printing, stationery material. These are not directly involved with the production, but without there being proper packaging and proper distribution of the products, these goods will get spoiled. So these costs are involved and they are part of the indirect material cost under the head of selling and distribution overheads. Indirect labor. Indirect labor over here refers to as the salary of the sales manager, the salesman, etc., which are not directly involved in the production, but they are involved in the selling and distribution. Without them, there cannot be sales and distribution of the products effectively. Next is indirect expenses such as rent, insurance of the sales office, advertising expenses. They become part of the indirect expenses in case of the sales and distribution expenses as well. This was about the elements of cost. Children, I would like to discuss what are direct and indirect. Direct refers to all those costs which are directly traceable for a product or service. For example, the cost of sugarcane in the sugar industry, the cost of cotton in the cotton cloth industry, they are part of the direct cost. And indirect cost refers to as all those costs which are incurred in a company which are not directly involved, directly chargeable to the production, such as salaries of the timekeeper, salary of the foreman, etc. They are not directly involved with the production, so their salaries are termed as indirect cost. In the next video, we would be talking at length about the classification of cost under different headings. Thank you. Have a great day.